Hey, Christy here with Automation on a Mission with your latest installment of our Business Booster trainings. Now, I think that we talked about in our description that we were going to talk specifically about Chat GPT, and I just wanted to put a disclaimer that all of the stuff that we're covering in this particular topic is probably also applicable to other tools as well, or not probably is applicable to other tools as well. So I just want you to be thinking about if you're using something else besides Chat GPT, that this training is still for you, because the tips and the things that we're going to talk about specifically for how to use one of these AI tools in your marketing strategy can still be applicable to other tools. You may need to think differently about some of the terminology, whether it's be like, how it stores its memory or something along those lines. But for the most part, what we're talking about is going to be universal for using all of the different kinds of AI tools in your business. So without further ado, let's get started. So I wanted to share just a couple of things that I found to be particularly, like I love me a good statistic or a fact. And one of the things that I found really interesting was when I did some research about people's adoption, understanding, faith, use and application of AI in their business. Overwhelmingly, more and more businesses both embrace it, they're using it, and they consider it an essential part of their business. So a couple of things that I really noticed that I wanted to call out here: 91% of business leaders understand that or believe that understanding and using AI will be crucial for maintaining a competitive edge over the next 5 years. Now, the thing about this that's super important to think about is, for those people that don't raise their hand when it comes to using AI, don't raise their hand when it comes to not trusting it, are the ones that honestly that I worry about. Not so much because, hey, drink the Kool-Aid and you should totally be somebody using AI, but the reality is that you are using it. Number one. So even if you think you are like, I'm not going to use it, if you use Google, if you are using Amazon, if you buy anything online, you're already using AI and you have been using it for a really long time. So it might start to look a little bit more different over the next several months and years. Like, for example, if I use Google as a simple example, I don't know if you all have noticed, but this time of year last year to today, if I would have done a search for these kinds of statistics, it would have given me a bunch of links to websites that provide that information. Whereas now I have their AI genie that's sharing those pieces of information. So when I talk about the fact that you are using it, even if you want to believe it or embrace it or not, doesn't matter. But the reality is it's not going anywhere. In fact, it's going to continue to become a more and more essential piece of how we operate in our day-to-day lives. So obviously it's going to then impact our businesses as well. So if you are heavy on the handbrake, I would really encourage you to take the stuff that we're talking about seriously and figure out how to, at a minimum, get educated, because you may be one of those people that's left behind without it. So next, businesses that have implemented AI tools like Chat GPT have seen a 29% higher revenue growth. And I think that's going to come into play because of the next statistic, which is that it also is showing a positive impact in terms of operational efficiency. So think about if you're able to, one, weigh the pros and cons, do your research, include other ideas besides just you and your internal thinking of the organization. Combine that with the ability to be more effective. How much more can you get done when you are using AI in your business? I would say that the results are going to be an improved, impact on your revenue. And then obviously you can get more done because you have a machine that can read a 200-page document in a half a second and produce, action steps, summaries, transcripts, so on and so forth. So, so much more can be done when you don't have to manually do the work yourself. And then next, from the consumer standpoint, 62% of consumers believe that businesses that are using AI technologies like Chat GPT are more innovative and forward-thinking. So I want you to just pause for and let that sink in. So right now, the general public says if you are a company that's embracing AI, that suggests that you are keeping the pulse on what's really relevant and important in the world. So it is a majority of the public says AI is important. I'll just leave it there. All right, so moving on. So how can you use AI in your business? So I think that there's a lot of discussion already about, different ways to have it produce emails. Do you have it write your blogs for you? How much do you edit? Yada, yada, yada. But beyond just content creation, which we will talk about, there are other things that you can use AI for. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what these things are. And I will share some of the places that I have, or some of the things that I've been doing as it relates to that particular thing. So number one, summarizing and extracting key insights. So I recently have found that I no longer need an additional plugin to do this, but I am an avid user of Chat GPT. I use it every single day. It's always a tab open in my browser. And I used to have to use an add-on called a GPT to be able to upload a video or a blog post or a long article or something and say, tell me what this is about. But now, new technology, new updates to Chat GPT, for example, I can just say, here's my video, give me a presentation on this particular topic. Or here is this webinar that I participated in, turn this into 10 social media posts that I can share over the next 3 weeks, for example. So you have the ability to take large amounts of data, and that's the key. And it doesn't have to be in video format. It could be video, it could be audio, it could be a 200-page book that you happen to have as a Google Doc that you upload. You can put all of that stuff in there, and in a matter of seconds, ChatGPT or your AI tool of choice is going to allow you or spit out something in reference to exactly what you're asking it to do. Give me 10 bullets to tell me what this thing is about. So you're able to do that. Idea generation. I love using ChatGPT for idea generation. So one of the things that I have really struggled with over the years is coming up with names for products or programs or what have you. Something else that I've struggled with at times is just content creation, like from a mapping standpoint or a scheduling standpoint. Okay, so give me 3 months worth of blog posts on these topics, and it will give me, a couple of titles to think about. Something that I've been working on lately is creating a couple of new courses. And one of the things that I did in the process of getting to the bottom of my strategy was using ChatGPT to brainstorm exactly what kind of topics fit into my specialty, and then moving forward with that, creating an outline and so on and so forth. So it's not just me using my my own creative genius and my friends, unfortunately, in the past, but using ChatGPT as a tool to help me narrow down ideas, come up with some clever names for this thing, or give me some topics that I can cover in a future course. So those are some examples for idea generation. Content creation and copy, I think that's probably the most commonly discussed thing in our sales and marketing world, using it to help you write emails, write blog posts, write press releases, write articles. It can help you with creating a lead magnet. All of those things can be done under that umbrella of content and copy creation. Here is a really cool thing that I did last year that I absolutely loved. I wanted to make a quiz for my lead magnet for years. I'm talking years. And I knew exactly what I wanted to do it on. I knew the questions, but I couldn't get past how to score it. And if you spend, 15 minutes with me, I'll probably tell you that I'm really bad at math, and just the thought of having to do math makes me stressed out. And so the idea of scoring should not have been a surprise to me, that was the thing that was creating like a total paralysis in my world, and therefore the quiz didn't happen. And then when ChatGPT came around, all of a sudden, and it wasn't even like I knew, it was just like, I wonder if I could give it the structure and then have it say score it for me. And it exactly did. And in under one day, I was able to create a 14-question quiz, and depending on how people scored, gave them a different results page. So I was pretty cool, and it was pretty cool, and I was pretty excited because it helped me overcome my biggest issue or my biggest fear. Next, data analysis and reformatting. So one of the things that I think is really cool is it does a lot more than just long text. So it can create tables of data for you, create databases and that sort of thing. But it can also, you can say, go out into the web and, scan the internet or search for these sites, et cetera, and give me these results. You can also upload tons of data and say, give me these results. So whether you're giving it the structure or you're asking it to go out and find something and produce that report for you, both of those things are possible with an AI tool. So using it to crunch your numbers and give you insight in whatever format you want. And that's the really cool thing, is the formatting. So if you need it in a chart, in a table, in a some sort of visual graphic, et cetera, it's going to do that for you. If you want it in long text, short text, social media, it can do all those things. You just need to tell it exactly what it is that you want. And here's an example of how I've used that in the last couple of months. So one of the things that I was really committed to as we started to work on our new verticals was knowing exactly what's the growth potential in those specific industries. And because I was looking at bigger picture vertical growth strategy, I wanted to address or like consider all of the different verticals that I was looking at from a big picture. So, and then, prioritize from there. And so I didn't search anything on Google. I used Chat GPT to do all of my research, all of my market feasibility for me. And so I created a table, a spreadsheet of my own. And I said, and I did this with individual, like one vertical at a time, because I really wanted, depending on where it was searching, depending on what its answers were, I wanted to be able to guide it to make sure that each time I asked the question, I got the exact data that I wanted. But when it was all said and done, I had a spreadsheet of comprehensive market research for 5 different verticals. And based on the findings of that market research, I could prioritize how I wanted to build those verticals out. Every single piece of that data that's on that Google sheet came from Chat GPT. I didn't search the web for anything. And every time I asked it to do that, go out on the web and find this information, not only did it come back and provide, really helpful and useful insights, but it also gave me the source of where that information came from. So I was able to then check the work and make sure that it wasn't just pulling random numbers out of thin air or inflating something or giving me broad general strokes over a topic, but I knew it was specifically looking at this particular information for this particular kind of client. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is visual content creation. And I put this as the last one because it's probably the area that could benefit from the greatest growth potential. And what I mean by that is, with visual content creation, you can use different AI tools to create visual graphics. Now, my own experience so far has not been great in terms of a final finished product. And the overall word on the street is that AI is definitely not good if you're asking it to do things like fingers, toes, and faces. So people, it's not good at. But I will say that the logo that you look at today in 2024 for Automation on a Mission, while I created that myself, it was actually inspired by using Chat GPT. So I don't remember what the journey was specifically, but I do remember doing some experimenting with Chat GPT to help me develop the color scheme that I use, and also to create sort of a tone and a feeling. And from there, I was able to take that and turn that into something that I was really excited about and really proud of. And I will say the fact that our graphic is circle, and everything is sort of in the circle except for the rocket that's launching out, that actually was inspired by ChatGPT. It wasn't written text that told me that. It was some sort of a graphic that it produced that I really liked the feeling that it emitted, and that was how that came about. So even though you can use ChatGPT to create visual graphics, and I think there's an element of practice of how you develop the prompts and guide ChatGPT or another AI tool to develop your graphics. It also might just be an inspirational tool to help you nail down exactly what that vision is, maybe because you've got it in your mind, you just don't know how to put it to words. So just something to think about. Yes, it needs some development, and also operate within what it's capable of. So next I want to talk about 10 tips that I hope would be helpful and beneficial as you think about how to use AI in your own marketing strategy. So number 1 is mastering your prompts. And I want to say that by this point in time, most people who are using an AI tool have figured out that you can't just say, give me a blog about this thing. Because yes, it's going to do that for you, but is it going to speak to your ideal client? Is it going to be using your voice? All of those things are still sort of out there in the universe because you've not given it any sort of clarity or direction. So when we talk about mastering your prompts, one of the things that we do is it started actually with 10 questions. I asked, and even the questions were generated from Chat GPT. I said, give me 10 questions that you need to know about my business, that when you have that information, it will help you create effective content. And now I think that my background information is 31 questions long. So I started with a couple of questions, and maybe it was an evolution of it needed clarifying information, or there's just the evolution of my business. And let me give you an example of one of the things that was important for me to add as a part of my own learning. So one of the things was talk about your products and your services. So I talk about automation on a mission being an automation tool. And then I'm in there and we're doing our work and we're making magic happen and we're creating content. It's going awesome. And then all of a sudden Chat GPT recommends HubSpot. What? Why would you offer as a solution to my ideal client HubSpot? Well, the reason is because it wasn't smart enough to know that that's a direct competitor and ultimately not going to help serve me in my own process of being of service to my prospects and my clients. So as my own list was evolving, I was getting better at directing ChatGPT on how to set me and itself up for success. So how I got from 10 questions to 31 questions, some of it was learning the hard way when it tries to recommend my competitors' products instead of my own products. Maybe it was trying to help ChatGPT understand the pain points of my clients so that when it writes email copy, that I, of course, tweak and adjust, that it knows and understands exactly who I'm talking to and exactly what they feel. And that empathetic voice then makes them more effective and less editing that I have to do later. So when we talk about your prompt, it is the more information that you can give it at the very beginning, the more effective your tool is going to be at delivering you the content that you need. So we, like I said here, developing a core set of Q&As that you use when you start a new chat. So I have those 31 questions. I have them saved in a document. Every time I create a new chat, I pull out that document and I copy that and I paste it. And the very first sentence in my prompt says, I want to use this channel for, and then I tell it what that chat is for, because I like to, and this is kind of getting ahead of myself, I like to keep my chats organized because it remembers those chats. And if I can keep that chat contain, this chat is about newsletter content, and this is the structure of my newsletter, I don't have to retrain it every time because every time I get in there, I start a new chat. So it will have that sort of memory over time. So I use that core set of questions and I start my new chat. I tell it what kind of things we're going to be creating, and then I go from there. All right. So next, utilizing a content framework. So what the idea here is that rather than say, I want to create this specific email about this one granular topic, my recommendation is that you start big. And you don't necessarily have to start big in your ask, but you want to start big in helping ChatGPT or your AI tool know and understand exactly what the goal is of this particular thing. So I kind of talked about the first sentence in my prompt is I want to use this for yada, yada, yada. So a lot of times what I'll do is if I'm starting a new chat, I'm gonna put that prompt in, I'm gonna specify what I'm gonna use this chat for, and then I tell it, do not do anything. Please review this information and all the links that are in there. So I link to my website, I link to whatever else might be in there, like a pricing page or something. And I tell it to go and search those things. So that way, if there's changes since the last time it looked, it knows to get updated. Because if you're using the paid version of ChatGPT, for example, it's not just looking at things through 2022 or 2023, it's actually able to search the web in real time. So if you created a funnel this morning and you press that save button and you tell it to go look at that page and summarize it, the paid version of ChatGPT, for example, will be able to do that. So that's a pretty cool thing. And then what I was trying to say though is, So when I say don't do anything, it's because oftentimes I'll give it this prompt, I'll say we're gonna create content for this kind of thing, and then it's all of a sudden gonna start spitting out ideas. And I'm impatient and I don't wanna wait. I also don't want you to waste your energy, Chat GPT, doing a bunch of stuff that I don't need. And it creates clutter in that particular thread that I then have to sift through if I'm trying to go back and find something later on. So I tell it to wait for me, and then I start giving it instructions. So I give it that broad, this is about who I am, what I do, yada, yada, yada. Don't sell HubSpot to my clients. And then I tell it, okay, so now we're gonna create a 12-month newsletter series for these kinds of people. And this is the topic that I want to cover. So now I'm going to give you the framework of my newsletter. And then instead of saying create 12 months of newsletters, we're going to start with January. And then I want you to give me the January thing. Now, if it can handle that sort of a broad thing, great. And you might have to go even more granular to just one section of that newsletter. So you can start with that big thing, newsletters, 12 months of newsletters, January. Let's just focus on the welcome message. That way, you guys are not like recreating the same thing, because the longer you stay in a chat, the more difficult it does become in terms of how it's taking in all that information. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes as well. So utilizing this big to small and telling it when you're ready for it to create content is only going to help you and your chat or your AI tool work better together. So think about yourself as a team or a partnership, and your intern is super low functioning and needs a lot of guidance. All right. Okay. So next what we want to do is define your voice. Now, I say this as a separate thing, but I want to also clarify that one of the 34 things, at least one of the 34 things in my prompt is my voice. So I don't have to like type this piece out separately, but think about training your AI tool to know and understand exactly how you talk. Now, I give you examples like friendly, professional, empathetic, casual, but you can go so far as to say, I want to emulate so-and-so. So if there's a particular author that you really like, so for example, I love Donald Miller. And one of the reasons I love Donald Miller is his voice, not his voice like me, but specifically the way he writes, the way he shares information is super easy. It's very concise. You do not need to have an advanced degree to understand what he's saying. And so when I create my prompt and I say, here's an example of someone who I really admire, I share Donald Miller because number one, I'm a firm believer in story brand, which is Donald Miller. And number two, for all the reasons I just explained about the way he communicates, to me feels very effective and smart. And so why not use that as a mechanism for emulating him in the work that I'm doing. I'm not trying to plagiarize him or his work, but I love the way he communicates, and I want my messaging to reflect a similar tone and feeling. The other thing that I thought is worth sharing is not only can you emulate your heroes and the people you admire, but let's say, for example, you wrote a blog in 2012 that you think is the pinnacle of your writing, and it is the most amazing thing ever. Upload that. Tell it to learn your voice from that particular thing. Review your website. Look at these vlogs I've created or shorts on Instagram. Use your own content just as much as you're using someone else's to train your AI tool to communicate the way you do. So if you want a closer match to your voice, is it ever going to be perfect? No. But can it get you there closer so there's less editing, less modification that you have to do? Absolutely. So the way you do that is you teach it who you are and what kind of voice you want to have and exactly what does that look like in terms of your brand and your identity. Next, teach your AI tool how you communicate. So I kind of mentioned this idea of let's not waste time storing a bunch of data that is only going to create clutter and also confusion in the future. So I want you to think about for a second keywords that like say it without saying it that you're using AI. So I put down here, I thought I did, the word delve. So like I do a lot of telling AI what not to say. Endeavor and delve are like trigger words for me at this point, because it loves those two words. So tell it the things that you want it to say, and also the things that you wish that it would avoid. So if there's things that are going to help you later in your own editing, or you don't have to redirect and correct your AI tool, because you're teaching it exactly what kind of things you want to convey. If there's a specific word that that you want to use, let's say, you know, tiddlywinks is a word that you feel like just doesn't get enough action, and, you know, or you have a catchphrase or a way that you sign off every time you send an email, for example, or you create a blog. Tell it to do that, and it just saves you time later on. It also is learning then a little bit about your sense of humor, about the way that you know, like how serious, how casual you are. The only way it's going to be able to do those things is if you give it that specific guidance. So again, a really low functioning intern, that's who we're dealing with here. Okay. I actually said, oh, don't recommend HubSpot as an automation tool. Why do that? You know what I'm saying? And also never, ever, ever use the word delve in an email again. And don't use dive. No, endeavor. There you go. Endeavor is the other one that just makes me crazy. Sometimes dive in, but you know what? I think that's also something that I say, so I can't really blame it. All right. So next, you get to control the tone and the pace. So something that I know comes up, you know, like we're in the sales and marketing business. You're in the business of selling your products and services. And exactly what tone you take is something that you have control over when it comes to how you partner with your AI tool. So one of the things that I try to do is be clear when I put a request in as to exactly what tone it is in relation to sales. Are we going the gentle approach? Are we going the quote unquote shit or get off the pot, you know, tone? Are we doing a long runway and we're creating one email or one blog post in a series where we're going to ramp up to an offer, but we're not there yet? I actually tell it that. So if we're doing long-term nurture, for example, if I'm creating long-term nurture emails for myself and I'm starting from scratch, I'm not going to start with a sale. I'm going to start with, all right, we're going to create a 14 email series, and I don't want to start talking from a sales perspective until email 7. So you can tell it that and still say, let's start with email 1, because it will remember that rule, that thing that you've asked it to do, and then take that tone into consideration that, okay, we're doing 14 emails and we want to slowly ramp up. Or maybe you're like, time is of the essence. Let's just get straight to the point, get in, get out. You know, you're either a yes or a no, and then I'm moving on. So you get to choose exactly what that looks like. So not only the words you choose, the voice you have, but the pace and the tone are equally as important in terms of its ability to serve and help you. Next, we've got our content buckets. So content buckets are, think about like the key topics that you talk about on a regular basis. You know, for us, sales and marketing would be a topic, automation would be a topic, mindset is a common topic that comes up, business building and scaling are topics that come up. Now they come up in large part because they are the branches off of our you know, core product, automation on a mission, and you have the same things. What are the things that bring people in to your ecosystem? What are the problems that you're solving? What's the transformation that you're creating? If you put those into buckets, now you have the things that you can talk about in your marketing content. And so what we say is your content buckets are those things that you go back to over and over again. And when you're clear on those content buckets, then you can organize your chats into those different content buckets. And while it is really cool to have a hybrid where we're going to talk about sales and also mindset at the same time, it's also nice to have a theme. So this particular thread or chat is going to specifically talk about automation. This one's specifically going to talk about mindset. And it just helps you utilize the previous conversations to work smarter, not harder in how you use your tool. All right. Which brings us to when you have been using the same chat for a long period of time, and long is not super easy to measure. It's not like, okay, well, we've had like 30 exchanges, now it's officially, you know, no longer a useful thread. What happens, have you ever had, I feel like it's like the wheels of the bus just fell off, where you're like bopping along, you're like, yeah, we're jamming, you know, and then it's like, and then you put salt and pepper in your crab soup and I'm just like, wait a minute, but we're not talking about making soup. Why are we talking about a recipe? It may not be that bizarre, but the point being that if you've used a chat long enough, typically it's typically a time thing, and not so much time as in like 2 hours, but more so about how much information in one chat are you able, or is the system able to keep track of before it starts to lose focus. And sometimes that focus comes because and I'm not really good at using this word, but in my research of how to try to convey this, the word that comes to mind is truncated. So it's taking all of your previous back and forth between you and Chat GPT, for example, in that one thread, and it's squishing it down and squishing it down and squishing it down and squishing it down, squishing it down, so it can keep doing more things and recall this information quicker, faster, more efficiently. But sometimes in the process of squish, 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 it is also then losing the core functionality of what it was doing. Like maybe it squished things to the extent where it doesn't remember what it's doing anymore. So it's called a hallucination. When you get to a place in your chat where it's too much, it's time to move on. It's time to create a new chat. It doesn't mean that you can't use Chat GPT anymore. It just means that maybe that thread isn't going to give you the accurate information that you need. What you can do is redirect by giving it the structure again of what it is that you're working on in that particular thread, and helping it find its way back into function and purpose. What I find is actually easier is to actually start all over again. Take my prompt, maybe give my big 30 some odd question answer prompt thing, tell it to wait a second because now I'm going to give some history about what we were doing before and go from there. The other thing that is new this year, up to this point, one chat was a silo and it could not get education from other chats, but now that's no longer the case. So if you're on the paid version of Chat GPT, you can ask it to look at other chats. Now, I haven't experimented with whether or not you can ask it to look at other chats and specify which ones, but you can ask it, look at this previous history in these other chats and take this into consideration, or use this to find this information so that we can keep going. So different things that you can do. You can stay in the same chat you're already in and, you know, try to help redirect, get the wheels back on the bus. You can start all over again with your prompt and some background information and pick up, you know, where you left off essentially. And you could do some sort of hybrid of that where you're asking to borrow the knowledge of those other chats and see if that helps as well. And you do have settings in these tools that you know, like things like tone and voice and, you know, the things to consider, the things to avoid, like all of that stuff are things that you can include in your settings as well. They don't typically come to mind for me because I use ChatGPT for myself, but I also use it to help with our clients and other projects that have absolutely nothing to do with my business. And so if I only use that, it might actually have a negative impact on some of the other work that we do that's unrelated. So just something to think about. So hallucinations come up when the wheels of the bus fall off, or when you know it's providing you with information that is wrong. So what is 1 + 1? It's 47. Okay, that's not right. Therefore, that is a hallucination. All right. Okay. So the next thing, and this is probably one of the biggest ahas I had last year that I absolutely love, and that is garbage in, garbage out. So what is ChatGPT doing to give you all of this amazing content? It's searching the web. It's searching previous chat histories, not just in your account, but in other accounts as well. And so if you don't teach ChatGPT what's acceptable and the way you work and you know, hey, that information is factually incorrect, then it will continue to perpetuate bad habits. And that is true for your business, my business, all the businesses. So when I think about garbage in, garbage out, and I think about giving feedback to ChatGPT, I'm not doing it just as a gift to myself. I'm doing it as a gift to you and every other user that's using AI right now. If we don't teach it what is and is not good, what is and is not an acceptable response, it can't learn. It can't get better or more intelligent. It's only going to continue to perpetuate garbage. So I am now to the extent where if I'm working on, let's say I'm creating a social media post and I like what it says in essence, but I don't like it exactly. I will go back and rewrite it. And then I'm going to share the final draft with Chat GPT for two reasons. Number one, because I'm really bad at grammar. So please check my grammar, Chat GPT, and make sure that it's right. And let me know if there's any mistakes. And then the second thing being that it's only going to do a better job of finding my voice if I tell it what my voice is, if I tell it what my voice is not. So not only do I get so specific as here's the copy that I'm going to go with, but I also tell it why I don't like what it said in the first place. I don't like these words. I don't like the tone of this sentence, or I think this sentence is good, but it needs to be down here because it's a little too soon in the messaging. So all of that stuff only helps me work better together with ChatGPT, and it's a gift. I'm paying it forward to everybody else who's using ChatGPT as well. Next, careful what you share. Now, I want to believe that this is common knowledge, but I think it's worth covering just in case anyhow. And that is that it is open source, and you can't control what happens to the data that you put in there. So if you put some sort of super secret, top secret, new invention that you've created into ChatGPT, you can't guarantee it's not going to share it with someone else. And I've heard stories about, and I think it was specifically in like software engineering and coding, where someone was using an AI tool to have it help write code, but that code was actually sharing quite a bit of like confidential proprietary, intellectual property essentially. And in doing so was putting the security of this data at a huge risk because that was then accessible and available to the entire world. So when you are sharing information to ChatGPT so that it can help you produce whatever content that is, be mindful of what you're sharing. Are you okay with someone else seeing it and reading it? Anything that has to do with a specific client or something that you don't want out there in the world for somebody else to take and use and take credit for are all things that you want to be considerate of, not just in terms of like, I know there's concerns about voice and actors, with the faces and things like that, but the same thing is true for you in terms of your own content. You don't want somebody else getting credit for all of your blood, sweat, and tears. And then the last thing that I want to share is stay informed about AI. So when was the last time you followed something that was going to teach you about the latest and greatest tips and tricks? I don't remember how I found out that I was able to have ChatGPT go and look at other chats, but it was a resource, some sort of article that I read. But not only is it beneficial for you to continue to grow and evolve with these tools as they become better, more sophisticated, able to do more things, because then you can use those things to your advantage in your business. But it's also important for you to understand how those changes are impacting how you work with the tool. So as an example, maybe when I started using ChatGPT, my prompt of 35 question and answers, 31, whatever it is, wasn't going to be fully embraced because maybe it wasn't sophisticated enough. Or maybe the questions weren't relevant to how the tool was pulling information off of the web or compiling its response, but now it is. And to that point, one of the things that I do every, probably once a month, every 2 months if I forget, is I ask it to review my prompts. Like, I'm going to start a new chat. Here's my prompt. I want you to tell me if there's anything else you need to know about my business to effectively do your job. And so that 31 questions or 35 question and answers didn't start out that big. It grew to that point because it continued to ask other questions, better questions to better do its job. And that's how I got to that 31 questions to begin with. So what I'm saying here is not only understand what the latest advancements are as it relates to AI, but understand how that AI tool is going to become more sophisticated by checking in with it and making sure that it actually has the information it needs to be successful. It's going to tell you if it needs more detail. All right. If you don't ask it to tell you that, though, it's going to just make do with what it's got. So including just making up stuff. So learn about the new features. Ask the tool if there's anything new it needs to know, and you will find that your own relationship, and I don't mean that in this like, oh, we're best friends and now it's my boyfriend. What I'm really trying to say is that the partnership will only be stronger and better and more efficient for you the more you work together to learn how to set each other up for success. All right? So just a quick recap, master your prompts, utilize that content framework, define your voice and how you want to communicate in the content it spits out, teach your AI how you want to communicate, control the pace of your flow, utilize those content buckets to stay organized both in your mind, in your tool, and in your marketing strategy, reduce hallucinations by starting new chats and also paying attention to, when in doubt, check the source, make sure the information is factually correct and it's on the right track. Contribute to the garbage in, garbage out by training and teaching what's working and what's not in your business. Be mindful of what you share and stay informed about AI and how to best use it in your business. And as always, let us know if you have any questions. Thanks so much.